I feel like high value men are, most of them are very boring, especially in those professions. They're hanging out in different places. I would have to change where I'm
You
going
feel
to
like
be.
they're boring?
I do. I definitely feel like the professions, they're definitely boring, and they're in different places. So I would have to change where I'm going to put myself in those environments. I don't think that they're unobtainable. I have to make the changes to go to those rooms.
The men who make millions of dollars have boring lifestyles.
I feel like a majority, they're living a life of peace. They're not out here in clubs and bars. They're living a life of peace.
Folks, I just let that run. I let that run because the arrogance it takes to make that statement is mind-boggling.
You're a 45-year-old woman
Mind
that's not in
boggling.
a Club
The
11
men
on a
who make
Sunday.
millions of dollars have to live a lifestyle of structure. They work a lot. And this is why I want you guys to understand that it doesn't matter from average to over here. They all want everything. You want a millionaire. You want to be a housewife. You want to have a luxe lifestyle. You want monogamy and you want excitement. French Bulldog, Sharpei, Yorkie.
Okay, famous baby, all hands on deck. I want to welcome you to Wide Awake Original Man. I am your host, K Famous, and you know we're gonna go pretty strong. We're gonna go as strong as we can on this topic on the judgment of God.
Cookie buzzard like cookies today.
Yeah, we're gonna go hard on the judgment of God. That's my son. The judgment of God, the daughters of Babylon or the daughters of Zion, which is black women in America. And we're going to be talking about Mr. Samuels and why did this man come to prominence at such a pivotal time in our existence here in America? What explains this? Look at what his body of work did after he went viral. Let's look at this word viral. Because right around the time Mr. Samuels was coming to prominence and getting millions and millions of subscribers is right when there is a virus, COVID-19. COVID-19 shut it down, and it's no secret. Mr. Samuels was born March 13th. COVID shut America down. It was on Donald Trump um, basically signed an executive order to make America under an emergency March 13th, which was Mr. Samuel's birthday. Bill Gates left his company March 13th. Breonna Taylor murdered March 13th. These are all signs that were setting the stage for the focus of what we did in last video as it spoke about the haughtiness of the daughters of Zion. Now look, three classes of people Mr. Samuels addressed. He addressed the church, he addressed pastors, and he addressed women. Of course, we know that a lot of his work specifically dealt with black men. But in terms of what's been taking place during this pandemic, see, there's a larger narrative that needs to be understood, and it's God's judgment. God's judgment. And I'm not talking about, oh, this is something that's years down the road. No, I'm talking about the end of an end. Because we've already been having over 90 years of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and 40 years, 44 years of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan speaking about God's judgment. I mean, message to the black man, fall of America, our Savior has arrived. These are all messages that Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan have been preaching for decades, that the day is at hand. So last video, we looked at the 3rd chapter. Mr. Samuels was positioned by God. What else can account for his rise? Yeah, you may not like it, but God is definitely interested in the affairs of black men. Here he is. He took a Kappa out of Oklahoma, a man who made something of himself, a man who understood the ins and outs of problems, and he made something of himself, and he was able to be used by God to shine a light on the condition of black women, specifically black women. This term, modern woman, the Bible uses the word haughty. And let me go back to this chapter 3, because this chapter 3 really does speak about the women. Now, let's go into where he says, verse 13, 3:13. Jehovah is taking his position to accuse. Listen, now look at this. Here is Jehovah taking his position to accuse. Now, when God issues a judgment, he issues a state of condition about the people and what he's going to do to them. What did he say he would do? He says to the elders and princes of his people. Now, elders and princes, these are men who are leaders, pastors, politicians, and princes, people who are up next. You have burned down the vineyard, and what you have stolen from the poor is in your houses. First and foremost. Why was Kevin Samuel so hard on the church? Because God, in his issue of judgment, this is who he's upset with. How dare you crush my people and grind the faces of the poor in the dirt, declares the sovereign Lord. But look at what he says. Jehovah says, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, walking with their heads high, flirting with their eyes, skipping along, making a tinkling sound with their anklets, Jehovah will strike the head of the daughters of Zion with scabs. Now listen, you can't make this a lie, because what is the issue of black women? Exactly. This is the issue of black women. Baldness, no hair, losing hair. You may not like what Mr. Samuels had to say about black women. His birth bears witness to the chapter and verse of what he got popular for. Who put him in? Who put him there? And why did people have such a problem with his message? Because people have a problem with God's message. I don't expect people who have an issue with God's message when it speaks about judgment and about the daughters of Zion to be happy with the man that God put there. I mean, this was his work. His work is over now. He's got he had a work to do. And his work was putting a light on our women, a little light on pastors. Why do you think pastors had such a difficult time with him? Black pastors. Why do you think those black pastors had a difficult time with him? Maybe they know something about him that many of us are too slow to catch up on. Kevin Samuels was positioned. He was positioned, all right, to put this topic of our women on Front Street. Why? Because Elijah Muhammad said you can't have a prosperous nation if the woman is in a real bad condition. You can't. The condition of women in Black America has to be made better.